Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Mercury hour, Mercury night. Mercury, 13 degrees, Gemini, in the 7th house, ruling over Sol and Uranus Sedna. And this is a great time for some Sedna veneration. So, today as I was cooking the salmon, and I found that it was somewhat difficult for me. And then I was like, wait a second, I give some salmon to Sedna. And immediately my hunger subsided. Like I was happy with the left fish, and that was like, it's almost like there's something healing in that action. So I have Mercury in Aries, and Sedna is right now around my Chiron, and I don't know why I found it difficult to actually allocate like half of the salmon to Sedna. Why did I find it difficult? But I know that the minute I did that, I felt satiated. It happened a couple of times when I shared food, but um, I don't call it an offering because it seems to me that she comes from something where it's more like sharing food or sharing resources. Um, and that immediately calmed my nervous system, and I was happy with the food that I actually have. Now, the ruler of my Mercury is in the 9th house, and the Mercury is in the 2nd house, so second house has to do with food. Sedna is related to food because she's related to the moon, and because particularly that was salmon, so that was literally the fishes from that region. Um, and the satiation then suddenly arised. Wait a second. Wait a second. Yeah, 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 yeah. To the rescue. Oh my god. Here is another one. Come here, come here. Of course. Oh my god. Yeah. Kaden's nearly dropped the television, and my parents like holding them together. um, Sol Uranus, sun ruling my 6th house of pets. Italy is in at home doing a revolution. Almost dropped the TV. Um, so this is my little Sedna story, and how it transit in my Chiron actually offering food to Sedna was remediating the hunger, because I have Rahu Chiron and the ruler in the 2nd house, so it's kind of like this constant hunger, and Sedna has to do with absorption of minerals. Somehow that was alleviating that. um, Now, when we talk about the Sedna story, the role of, let's say, ritual, because in one of the versions of the Inuit story, um, there's a missing part about what Sedna's father was told, and how he got himself entangled in some sort of witchcraft, because and that is also to remind us that it can range from people that are told that their child is going to be okay, or and to downright, with other things as well, because it's downright abuse and so on. But when we talk about the range of the stories, um, a lot of people that the child grew up, let's say, seeing stuff, and then they send the child to somebody that, let's say, knows about that, and that's the venue, and so on. So in Sedna's story, the variations of the Sedna story include also the parts where the father couldn't retrieve his daughter. There's a version where he tries to save his daughter, and he tries to retrieve his daughter, um, but that's something that is, most of the version now. Other versions tell a story where the father was punishing his daughter to marry a dog, and she was happier with the dog, or to, yeah, it was various stories. Um, Another thing to do is, and this is where I spoke about when we talk about, let's say, the rituals that are like of torture and so on, then the fact that if children went there, the what comes out, and um, a story of retrieving children from there, and this is where at that juncture I was talking about the fact that it is um, the setting of the torture, and sometimes the intermittence between, that creates a situation where an extreme isolation creates a situation that the person is basically becoming something else, let's say. And this is why this element of choice, we should keep that in mind, because not always there is choice, and that is where children go missing, and what returns, if anything. And to bring them back, we need to understand it, because um, um, so And we also have to remember that in those dissociations, when a person is misaligned with their body, then the behavior of the person in the body and the person outside of the body is different than the aligned behavior. Um, and understanding that is also important um, to bring with children they were to bring them back if they are alive. Also pertaining the adult self, the child self, and so on and so forth, creating the space for alignment, and the practices contribute to alignment, uh, because it's not like the people that make the financial decisions in the world are aligned. And this is also why, okay, I addressed previously that if we think about um, the structure where, let's say, people didn't agree to do certain things, then they're brought, whether it's tax evasion or whatnot, um, is something that one of the reasons that I haven't launched the business and said, okay, what about the currency? What about this? What about that? Is because there's something I foresaw. I didn't know what. There's something I foresaw that, just like in violent relationships, the financial violence aspect. And the us and them distinction is really is a circumstantial more than any other bloodline. Or now, of course, remembering the sense of self or remembering the origin can come to people through bloodline, because bloodlines were targeted. So I don't want to make it look like I ignore bloodline. Um, and yet, if we think about the world without those oppressing of bloodlines, we basically, okay, it's a decolonizing in the sense that it's actually a return to sense of self, both beyond the bloodline, and then the recognition of the bloodlines can, or for some people, if the bloodlines come first and then the sense of self with them. Um, and This, I think, is my little Sedna veneration. Um, um, More to say. Yeah, Uranus is direct um, on 1 degree Capricorn, on 1 degree 1 degree Gemini. Mercury, the importance of Mercury. Mercury is the traveler between sects, and it is the doors or the gates. And at the door, at the gate, Sedna rules the maritime doors or gates with this combination. This is why I have been receiving so much about maritime. At first it was maritime borders, when it was the Saturn Neptune maritime law, but here is the maritime. And it's not about law, but about um, the metals, and the ether allocation of resources. If you think about both from the bottom of the ocean, but also the shipping and transportation, alloys. It's about the alloys. Mercury rules alchemy. And this is where we are reminded that the trafficking to money launder is not, and here's another thing I want to address, because the way that in some of the cases, the way that what is used basically is providing what was missing. And this is also something where the the uh, yeah, there's just so many things that connect to one another here. The word alloy, I was receiving the word alloy, and um, I was kind of called to have a plate of silver and gold for the unification of the sects. Um, Copper and tin, iron and rock, and for Mercury, I received alloy. And this is, we are at a time where they learn to manufacture gold. Um, And perhaps it's connected to the Saturn, to the Venus Jupiter, because Juneteenth would actually have the moon in Aries, separating from Saturn, and and Jupiter Venus would still conjunct. And I'm like, Juneteenth, I cannot make it up. And this is a moon that is decreasing. Peace can only be where there's no slavery. Um, Now, the the how should I say that? Sedna remind us Uranus is life energy, that this is not, how should I, that this is that when people try to trade that, it has a trajectory. Now, here is what the naturalist would say, or the materialist would also say, well, isn't the plant, isn't um, or when we eat a fresh salad, let's say, and while that's not untrue, the I believe that, let's say, if we think about the vegetation as well as the cattle, doing that to humans created doing that to cattle and doing that to vegetation, which is when I addressed that our avocado, um, the people work at the avocado farms, those are not any more rape free than the cattle. Now, on the trajectory is to abolish the torture and the rape, and that requires space, and that requires um, also the nourishment from the sense of from the place of infanthood, because for people it had required um, mercurially absorb the nourishment but not the bait. It's something that is, and I think that for the people that have people in there, knowing that it's those it's those tortures that turn people into perpetrators, and at the same time, it's the removal of the tagging of the victim that that permeates into the sense of self, and then the tagging of the perpetrator is removed as well. This is why I think why instinctively people that have raped, they are instinctively portraying themselves as the victim, but they portray themselves as the victim of that person because they're not yet, I cannot say brave enough, because they went through so much to repress that braveness. Um, and with every, with every time that we ask for more for ourselves, whether it's the concept of orgasmic birthing that I was talking about, then more people can. For example, if I had to reach the gnosis that I reached today without having astrology program or free teachings, or then I'd probably have to go a certain trajectory where I would already be third of a three-fourth of a perpetrator, having to sort the wheat from the chaff from people I've trauma bonded with. And I can say from my short time in academia that when I, let's say, walked out, I didn't understand what I'm walking out of, even though my satire was portraying way more than I understood. And the issue is, of course, the creation of a sense of belonging or emotional connection without, learning about secure attachments, or I wouldn't even have what to name. Then imagine children. Like it's so. This is a difficult story, I know, but it's also overwhelming. Um, Now with the Chiron Mercury, the wounding underneath the words had to do with those things in the world, and the many things that are like, when people use word in an occultistic context, those rituals were basically, you know affecting the world. They were taking what people believe and making it as if nothing means anything, and people would actually experience that. And then suddenly, like, but wait a second, suddenly things do mean something. Yeah, that's my Sedna veneration episode.